This is the shocking travel story of an American man in his 30s who, while journeying through the remote backcountry of Kazakhstan, meets a tribe. The husband of this tribe then makes an astonishing request for the traveler to impregnate his 3 wives. Before you dive into the video, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot. Ethan Miller, 33, left New York City like a man on the run. The towering skyscrapers, the endless yellow cabs, the soul-crushing pressure of the Wall Street grind, the city's relentless pace was slowly eating away at him. What am I even chasing anymore? The question echoed, but no answer came. The day he walked away from his high-paying finance job, he sat alone in his sparsely furnished Brooklyn apartment and spread out a world map. His gaze fell upon the vast heart of the Eurasian continent, Kazakhstan. A place less tainted by the relentless march of modernity, where the grandeur of nature felt more potent than any skyscraper. A vague hope flickered within him that perhaps, there, things might be different. All he needed was a well-worn backpack, a beat-up, older model Jeep Wrangler, and the courage to leave it all behind. This wasn't just a road trip, it was a desperate escape from a life that felt increasingly hollow. Or perhaps, a quest to find some lost part of himself. The road to Mangistau province, in Kazakhstan's far west, felt like crash landing on another planet. An endless expanse of ochre-colored earth stretched out, baked by a scorching sun. The parched wind whipped up dust devils, sweeping across the steppe. Strange rock formations and salt lakes occasionally punctuated the landscape, creating an almost surreal vista. The din of the city was utterly silenced. Only the whisper of the wind and the hum of the Jeep's engine filled the vast emptiness. After several days of driving, his solitude deepened, yet, strangely, his mind grew calm. The tangled anxieties that had plagued him in Manhattan unraveled and dissolved into the immense silence of the steppe. Just as the very real crisis of dwindling fuel and water loomed. A plume of smoke, like a distant mirage, caught his eye, squeezing out the last of his fuel. He approached to find, almost like an illusion, 3 yurts standing on the plains. Weather-beaten, faded canvas, soot-stained chimneys, a few sheep and goats grazing nearby. It was a small nomadic settlement. An all, where time seemed to have stood still. Ethan's sudden appearance created a brief moment of tension. Dogs barked wildly, and wary eyes peered at him from the yurt doorways. But when Ethan, visibly exhausted, approached and asked for help in broken Russian, a language he'd picked up a little of in preparation, their expressions softened. The deep-rooted spirit of hospitality, konakasi, ingrained in Central Asian nomads, meant they wouldn't turn away a stranger. At the heart of the all was a man named Beric. He was said to be in his mid-30s, but the steppe sun and wind had etched deep lines into his face, making him appear much older. His eyes were deep and thoughtful, yet held an undercurrent of weariness and hardship. Beric led Ethan into the largest yurt. The interior was surprisingly spacious and cozy. A hearth sat in the center, and colorful, patterned carpets adorned the walls, alongside neatly arranged household tools. A peculiar mix of spices and the faint scent of livestock filled Ethan's lungs. And there, he met Beric's 3 wives. The first, Igel, seemed to be in her late 20s or early 30s, with a calm and reserved demeanor. Her movements were deft, and while she treated Ethan with politeness, she maintained a certain distance. The second, Gulnara, was perhaps in her mid-20s, with curious, sparkling eyes and an infectious, lively smile. She spoke to Ethan readily, trying to communicate in her limited Russian. The youngest, Medina, could barely have been 20. She was shy and seldom met Ethan's gaze, but an occasional determined glint in her eyes hinted at a strong inner core. She silently poured tea and served food, fulfilling her role. They offered Ethan hot, salty tea and kumis, a fermented mare's milk. Soon, beshbarmak, a traditional dish of rich, fatty mutton eaten by hand, was served on a large platter. Ethan, though a bit awkward, tasted the food in their manner and expressed his gratitude. After the meal, as they sat around the hearth, Beric smoked for a long time. seemingly lost in deep thought. Only the crackling of the firewood and the whistling wind broke the silence in the yurt. Finally, Beric broke the heavy silence. His voice was low and earnest. "Brother Ethan," Beric said, looking him straight in the eye. "This land, Mangostau, is beautiful but harsh. We have lived here for generations. But we have been isolated from the world for too long." He paused, glancing at his wives. "When bloodlines become too close, it goes against the natural order. A shadow has fallen upon our all. We are seeing more unhealthy children born, or couples unable to receive the blessing of a child at all. Our tribe, it's on the verge of disappearing." Ethan listened silently, feeling the weight of Beric's words. Beric's gaze fixed on Ethan again, a desperate plea in his eyes. "This is why our ancestors, long ago, chose a way to bring in healthy blood from the outside. When a guest, sent by the heavens, strong and healthy like you, Brother Ethan, arrives, we make a desperate request." Beric took a deep breath. His next words sent Ethan's mind reeling, turning it completely blank. "Please, I ask you to give your seed to my wives. Help us, so they may bear healthy children for the future of our tribe." The air in the yurt became as heavy as lead. Ethan found it hard to breathe. This was no joke. Beric's expression, his tone, the downcast, motionless figures of his 3 wives, everything confirmed this was their desperate reality. Culture shock didn't even begin to cover it. This proposal shook the very foundations of the values and ethics Ethan had been raised with his entire life. "Mr. Beric, that's insane," Ethan stammered, his voice trembling. I can't do that. Back home, where I'm from, this kind of thing, it's not just frowned upon. It's completely out of the question. It goes against everything we believe. I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry." Disappointment and dejection flickered across Beric's face. But he didn't give up easily. "This is not about mere desire or a transaction. Brother Ethan, the survival of our community is at stake. It may seem unethical in your eyes, but for us, it is like our last hope to continue our lineage." He added, his voice filled with desperation. "Just one night, please. If a child is conceived, we will be indebted to you for life." Igul, Gulnera, and Medina remained silent. Their tightly pressed lips and trembling eyelashes betrayed a storm of complex emotions. Ethan couldn't bring himself to look them in the face. He once again stated his refusal. Firmly, "I am truly sorry. If there's any other help you need, I will do anything. But this request, I cannot grant." That night, Ethan lay awake in a corner of the yurt, the cold night air seeping in, his mind a turmoil of thoughts. What is the right thing to do? Am I supposed to just abandon my own moral compass? Or am I just being a clueless American, totally missing their point? Unanswerable questions swirled in his mind like the steppe wind. The next morning, Ethan wanted to leave the All immediately. But circumstances prevented it. Overnight, one of Beric's Jeep tires had gone completely flat. And to make matters worse, the sky was heavily overcast, threatening rain. Beric insisted it was the will of the heavens, offering to repair the tire himself and urging Ethan to stay a few more days until the weather cleared. Ethan wasn't blind to the underlying intention in Beric's hospitality, but he had no other choice. Thus, an uncomfortable and anxious cohabitation continued for several more days. During this forced stay, Ethan observed the nomadic life more closely. It was a continuous cycle of hard labor, waking before dawn to milk the sheep, tending livestock on the vast steppe until dusk. Water was precious, food simple, yet they didn't complain. They stoically lived their lives, submitting to the rhythms of nature. The strength of the 3 wives, in particular, left a deep impression on Ethan. Igul, despite their meager resources, kept the inside and outside of the yurt immaculate and meticulously cared for the livestock. She spoke little, but her every action exuded the responsibility and wisdom of an elder. Sometimes, when their eyes met, Ethan thought he could read sadness, resignation, and something unidentifiable in her deep gaze. Gulnera, even amidst the hard labor, never lost her smile. She'd try to talk to Ethan in her broken Russian, hum Kazakh traditional songs, and eagerly share the small joys of nomadic life. It occurred to Ethan that perhaps a deeper anxiety lay hidden beneath her cheerfulness. Medina was quiet but remarkably skilled with her hands. She'd immerse herself in making felt from sheep's wool or treating leather. And sometimes she would gather and prepare medicinal herbs found abundantly on the steppe. If Ethan got even a small scratch, she would silently approach and apply an herbal remedy. Her shy kindness revealed a warm heart. Ethan, awkwardly at first, began to help with their chores, simple tasks like carrying water or chopping firewood. In the process, he grew a little closer to the three women. Though language was a barrier, a subtle bond formed as they worked side by side, sharing glances and silent understanding. Yet, the closer he felt to them, the heavier his heart became. The more he learned of their innocence and resilience, the crueler Beric's proposal seemed, and his own situation felt all the more agonizing. Meanwhile, Beric's health was visibly deteriorating. His coughing fits became more frequent, and now even breathing seemed a struggle. His face grew pale, and he lost a noticeable amount of weight. He no longer tried to hide his illness. One night, after a severe coughing fit, Beric coughed up blood. The crimson spatters on the yurt floor cast a dark shadow of death. Weakened and drained, Beric called Ethan to his side. His voice was barely a whisper. "Brother Ethan, you see now, I don't have much time left." He gasped for breath, then continued, "I have terminal lung disease. This harsh steppe wind, it's choking the life out of me." Ethan could say nothing. Beric weakly grasped Ethan's hand. It was burning hot. "When I die, what will become of these poor women? Young widows, with no children. It's nearly impossible for them to survive in this unforgiving land. You, with your healthy vitality, you can give them life. A future, even if the child isn't of my blood. If I could just see a child embraced in my wife's arms, I think I could close my eyes in peace." Hot tears streamed down Beric's face. It was a man's final wish, a desperate plea for the survival of the family he would leave behind. Ethan couldn't bring himself to pull his hand away. Just then, Igel quietly approached and knelt before Ethan. She looked directly into his eyes and said in a trembling voice, "We have been prepared for this for a long time. If this is our destiny, then we must accept it. Beric's wish is our wish. If, through you, we can have a child, it might be the only way for us to survive." Gulnera and Medina, also in tears, silently nodded their agreement. Their eyes reflected a mixture of sorrow, resignation, fear, and the desperate hope they now pinned on Ethan. This stranger from so far away. Ethan felt a sense of powerlessness, as if caught in the vortex of a colossal fate. Not many days later, Beric quietly passed away, with his 3 wives and Ethan by his side. His final expression was strangely peaceful, as if he had finally laid down a heavy burden he had carried for a long time. The yurt filled with the mournful cries of the 3 women and the sound of the steppe wind. A simple but solemn funeral was held according to Kazakh tradition, and Ethan, an awkward mourner and a witness to complex emotions, observed the entire process. Beric's death placed the unavoidable weight of a decision squarely on Ethan's shoulders. For several days after Beric's death, a deep sorrow and silence enveloped the all. Ethan spent time helping the 3 bereaved women, but his inner turmoil raged. The last wish of a dying man, the desperate reality of the living, and his own deeply rooted American values, no matter how he thought about it. He couldn't find a resolution. Is it right for me, an outsider, to interfere so deeply in their lives, to determine their fate? Is fathering a child truly the only way to help them? Isn't there another way? Countless questions swirled in his head, but no clear answer emerged. Eventually, Ethan decided to leave. He felt he might be running away from a responsibility and a weight of fate he couldn't bear. But it seemed like the only option at the time. He gave Igel the food, medicine, and some money he had. His farewell laden with apology and complex emotions. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice choked. "Please, take care of yourselves." Igel accepted them silently. Her eyes held no resentment, no blame, only a profound sadness and resignation. Gulnera tried to force a smile, but her eyes were red and tear-filled. Medina couldn't bring herself to look up. With a heavy heart, Ethan got into his jeep, watching the yurts and the silhouettes of the three women shrink in his rearview mirror. He felt a heart-wrenching guilt and compassion, as if he were leaving a part of his own heart behind. The journey to Aktau, the main city of Mangostau, felt unusually long and desolate. Ethan couldn't shake the faces of the three women from his mind, their strength hidden beneath vulnerability. Their eyes trying to conceal sorrow. Their final silence. He constantly questioned himself. Was my decision right? Did I bail on him too easily? The rugged landscape of the steppe no longer seemed awe-inspiring. Instead, it felt bleak and empty, reflecting his own troubled spirit. In Aktau, Ethan stayed in a cheap hostel for a few days, trying to pull himself together. The city noise and bustle provided a temporary distraction. But at night, the images of the three women would invariably return, robbing him of sleep. He felt lost, unsure of what to do or where to go next. Then, while buying supplies in a market, Ethan overheard a conversation between merchants from another region. The Ustayot Plateau is a complete disaster zone. I hear, a sudden blizzard has blocked roads and isolated the Alls. It's especially bad in the remote areas. There are even rumors of wolf packs roaming around. In that instant, Ethan's heart seemed to stop. That was where the All he had left was located. Beric gone, only the women left, a brutal blizzard and hungry wolf packs. The thought alone was horrifying. Igul, Gulnera, Medina, could those women, vulnerable as they were, possibly survive such a catastrophe? Vivid images of yurts battered by a snowstorm and the women terrified flashed through his mind. There was no more time for hesitation. Ethical dilemmas, guilt, anxieties about the future, all of it vanished in the face of the desperate, primal urge to save them from mortal danger. He immediately left the hostel, loaded his jeep with fuel, emergency food, cold weather gear, and even a hunting knife for unforeseen circumstances. Then, without a second thought, he drove back towards the steppe, towards what might be a living hell. This time, it wasn't an escape, it was a conscious, willed return. The return journey to the Ustayot Plateau was far more treacherous than he had anticipated. The sky was a sheet of grey snow clouds, and a fierce wind whipped thick snowflakes relentlessly. Visibility dropped to near zero, and the road was already buried under a deep layer of snow, making it impossible to distinguish the path. The jeep repeatedly got stuck in snowdrifts, and Ethan had to dig it out with a shovel countless times. The biting cold seeped through his insulated clothing, and sensation in his hands and feet grew numb. In the blinding blizzard, he pushed on, sustained by the single, unwavering thought. He had to save the three women. After several sleepless days and nights of driving, Ethan finally reached the vicinity of the familiar All. But the scene that greeted him was one of utter devastation. Of the three yurts, one had completely collapsed under the weight of the snow, its frame starkly exposed. Another leaned precariously, looking as if it could give way at any moment. Around the last, seemingly intact yurt, the three women were desperately clearing snow. Their clothes were soaked and frozen, their faces and hands a deathly purplish-blue from frostbite. In the distance, the faint howls of hungry wolves drifted on the wind, and the sheep, trapped in their pen, bleated in terror. Ethan immediately jumped out of his jeep and ran towards them. Igul, Gulnera, Medina, his voice, hoarse, cut through the howling blizzard. Hearing their names, the three women looked up and saw Ethan. For a moment, they were speechless, their eyes a mixture of disbelief and the profound relief of seeing a ray of light in their despair. There was no time for an emotional reunion. They had to resume their desperate fight for survival. Ethan immediately began to take charge, his voice calm and decisive in the crisis. First, they salvaged usable poles and canvas from the collapsed yurt to reinforce the weakest parts of the remaining one. Together, they worked through the night, building a wall of snow bricks around the yurt's exterior to block the ferocious wind. He found snow-covered firewood, managed to start a fire, and brewed hot soup with the emergency rations he'd brought, warming their frozen bodies. Ethan opened his first aid kit and carefully treated the women's frostbitten hands and feet. Medina helped Ethan by finding and preparing herbs, while Igel, despite her exhaustion, tended to the remaining livestock, trying to keep hope alive. Gulnara, in her own way, tried to lift their spirits, encouraging Ethan and her sisters. As night fell, the wolves' howls grew closer. They took turns standing guard through the night, keeping torches lit and making loud noises to deter the animals. In the process of battling the extreme cold, facing starving predators, and defending their crumbling shelter, they were no longer a stranger and three bereaved widows. They were comrades, relying on each other for their very lives. A community forged in the crucible of hardship, though their spoken language was still clumsy. In this extreme situation, they could read each other's intentions and emotions through mere glances and brief gestures. Ethan marveled at their strength and resilience, and the three women began to feel a deep trust and reliance on Ethan, who had returned in their hour of greatest need to protect them. After several hellish days, the blizzard finally subsided. The sky, as if it had never stormed, returned to a brilliant blue, and the steppe transformed into a pristine white expanse. Above the ruined all, warm sunlight streamed down. The four of them, exhausted, emerged from the yurt and silently watched the rising sun. They had survived. They had fought together and survived together. The harsh ordeal had demolished all walls between them, and in their place, a deep, unbreakable bond had formed, one that words couldn't describe. The scars left by the blizzard were deep, but the life force of the steppe was strong. Ethan and the three women joined forces to rebuild their shattered all. Ethan used tools and practical know-how he'd picked up over the years to repair the yurts more sturdily, while the women made felt and treated leather in the traditional way, re-establishing their household. As they sweated together, laughed together, and worried about the future together, they naturally became woven into each other's lives. One evening, as they sat around the hearth drinking tea, Igel quietly spoke. Looking into Ethan's eyes, she said in broken but heartfelt words, "Ethan, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have survived. Thank you so much." Gulnara and Medina nodded, their eyes glistening with tears. Faced with their sincere gratitude, Ethan realized he could no longer separate his future from this place and these people. He finally voiced the decision he had been wrestling with for so long. His voice was low and quiet, but it held an unwavering resolve. "I will stay with you," Ethan said, looking at each of the three women in turn. "I will remain here and become your family. I will now accept Beric's last request. Though I may not be perfect, I will be a shield for you and for the children." At his confession, a mixture of surprise, deep relief, and a faint glimmer of joy flickered across the women's faces. Igel quietly wiped away a tear. Gulnara smiled brightly, and Medina shyly lowered her head, though a smile played on her lips. It was a moment when four hearts became one, without any grand ceremony or formal vows. From that day on, Ethan officially became the husband and protector of Igel, Gulnara, and Medina. He adapted quickly to the nomadic way of life. He would rise at dawn to drive the livestock to pasture, and he learned to repair yurts and hunt. He made mistakes at times, being clumsy in his new roles, but his three wives were his steadfast support and patient teachers. Igel quietly managed the household, teaching Ethan the wisdom and traditions of nomadic life. Gulnara, with her characteristic bright and positive energy, infused vitality into their arduous daily existence. Medina, with her excellent knowledge of herbs, looked after the family's health and gradually taught Ethan the Kazakh language and culture. In the evenings, they would gather in the yurt and share stories. Ethan would tell them about his distant home in America, about big cities and different ways of life, and the wives would share legends of the steppe and nomadic songs. The barriers of culture and language slowly diminished through their efforts to understand one another. Replaced by respect, understanding, and a warm affection, Ethan was no longer a lonely, lost outsider. He was a member of a new family, rooted in the Mangostau steppe. In time, new life blossomed. Igel bore a healthy son, and Gulnara and Medina each gave birth to beautiful daughters. The long-absent sounds of children's cries and laughter once again echoed in the hall. Ethan, with clumsy tenderness, held and cared for the babies, feeling the profound joy and responsibility of fatherhood. He now had 3 wives, several children, and the remaining livestock, truly a large family. Sometimes, gazing at the myriad stars spilling across the night sky, Ethan would reflect on the path he had walked, on a journey undertaken to abandon everything. He had paradoxically found the meaning and happiness he had so desperately sought. It wasn't a life of glamour or comfort, but it was genuine and fulfilling. The story of the American man and the 3 Kazakh women, begun in a small hall on the vast Mangostau steppe, was now entering a new chapter. A harsh wilderness and an unpredictable future still lay before them. But they were no longer alone. Leaning on each other, with love and faith, they would continue to brave the steppe winds and write their own happy history beneath the starlight. Ethan now understood. True adventure wasn't about exploring unknown worlds, but about willingly offering oneself in unexpected relationships and creating a new world together. His heart now beat in rhythm with the steppe. When the harsh winter finally yielded to spring, a fresh new energy pulsed through Ethan Miller's small hall. The children born to Igor, Gulnara, and Medina were growing quickly, filling the yurt and its surroundings with the bright laughter. Ethan, though still a bit clumsy, gradually grew accustomed to his fatherly duties, changing diapers, making baby food, and carrying the little ones on his back. His life was now wholly intertwined with his 3 wives, his growing brood of children, and the harsh yet beautiful nature of Mangostau. The responsibility of providing for his large family became a new source of motivation for Ethan. Beyond mere survival, he wanted to offer them a better life. While adapting to nomadic life, he constantly sought other possibilities, drawing on his American ingenuity. What caught his eye was his wives' incredible skill with their hands. The traditional felt carpets, tekames, that Igor and Medina created from sheep's wool were particularly exquisite in their intricacy and beauty. The vibrant patterns, rich colors, and centuries-old traditional techniques made them true works of art. Gulnara's warm and gracious hospitality was also impressive. She had a special talent for making even a stranger like Ethan feel instantly at ease and comfortable. One night, Ethan used a satellite internet terminal, a significant purchase he'd made on a trip to the somewhat distant city of Aktau, to research the outside world. He discovered a growing global interest in handmade crafts and unique cultural experiences. In particular, sustainable travel that respected the environment, so-called ecotourism, was emerging as a new trend. He became convinced that Mangostau's surreal chalk mountains, mystical underground mosques, the grandeur of the vast Ustayot Plateau, and the unique nomadic lifestyle itself could be attractive tourist resources. Ethan carefully shared his idea with his wives. What if we try to sell our felt crafts online to people back in the States? Or in Europe? And what if we create a small, boutique tour experience, inviting a very small number of people who want to experience our life and this incredible landscape? With us as the guides, Gulnara, your natural warmth would make people feel right at home. The wives' reactions varied. Igor was skeptical. She believed living the way they always had was the safest. Will people from so far away really want to buy our things? Is it truly a good idea to bring strangers into our home? Our way of life? Gulnara's eyes sparkled with immediate curiosity. Really? Our crafts could be sold across the ocean? That's amazing. Don't worry about hosting guests. I'd love that. Medina listened to Ethan's explanation quietly, seemingly lost in thought. Ethan understood Igor's concerns but didn't want to give up easily. He tried to persuade them. We can connect with the world in a new way while still preserving our traditions. We won't just bring anyone. We'll open our doors only to those who respect and want to learn about our culture. And if our income increases, we can create a better future for our children. Maybe even save for their education. Eventually, the wives agreed to Ethan's proposal. They decided to start on a small scale. Igor and Medina poured more care and effort into their felt products than ever before, while Ethan documented the process with photos and videos to share online. He wove together stories about the meanings behind traditional Kazakh patterns and the nomadic way of life, creating products with a narrative. Simultaneously, he designed a small-scale, private 2-day, one-night tour program to experience Mangistau's hidden gems and nomadic culture. Gulnara threw herself into preparing for guests, and Medina readied herbal teas and traditional dishes to be featured on the tour. The first order came sooner than expected. A folk art collector from France, captivated by the unique beauty of a tekame Igel had made, offered a significant price for it. A few days later, an adventurous couple from California cautiously inquired about the tour. These first fruits of their labor, though small, brought immense joy and hope to the entire family. The fact that their hard work was being recognized with tangible value was deeply rewarding. A renewed sense of energy filled the yurt. It was more than just earning money. It was the beginning of a sense of pride in being connected to the world and having their worth acknowledged. Ethan's family's small business gradually began to grow through word of mouth. Custom order requests increased online, and inquiries from travelers wanting to experience Mangistau's unspoiled nature and the authentic nomadic lifestyle continued to come in. To handle the increasing workload, Ethan started sharing work with other relatives in the elderly grandmothers skillfully spun sheep's wool into yarn, and young men helped with driving or guiding for the tours. Thanks to this, the small, isolated all began to show signs of revitalization. Ethan set up a separate yurt to serve as a workshop and a welcoming space for guests. However, as the business grew, unexpected problems and conflicts began to surface. The first clash was between deeply rooted traditional values and the new changes. Gender roles and communication. The business often required direct communication with male buyers or tourists from outside. Sometimes, Ethan would ask his wives to explain products or introduce their culture, which clashed with the traditional Kazakh culture that often limited women's roles in a male-dominated society, particularly conflicting with Igel's conservative values. Igel was reluctant to present herself before unfamiliar men and also expressed dissatisfaction when Ethan, engrossed in the business, seemed to neglect traditional head of household duties like herding livestock or hunting. Ethan's direct, American-style efficiency-focused communication style, so different from the more metaphorical and indirect expressions his wives were used to, sometimes led to misunderstandings or hurt feelings. Differing economic views. As income increased, disagreements arose over how the money should be used. Ethan wanted to reinvest a significant portion into the business and save for the children's education, thinking about college funds. His wives, however, were more inclined to use it for immediate improvements in their living standards, helping relatives, or increasing the number of livestock, a traditional symbol of wealth. Gulnara, especially, loved to be generous to those around her, sometimes leading to expenditures Ethan considered excessive. These were conflicts stemming from different economic perspectives and priorities. Conflicts in child rearing. As the children grew, differences in parenting styles also emerged. Ethan, drawing from his American upbringing, emphasized regular routines, certain hygiene practices, and the importance of early literacy. His wives, on the other hand, wanted the children to run freely in the steppes' natural environment, learning and growing on their own. Ethan's attempts at what he considered normal discipline often clashed with Igel's belief that one should not break a child's spirit. Sometimes, when Gulnara showed curiosity and tried to follow Ethan's new methods, a subtle tension would arise between Igel and Gulnara. These conflicts sometimes erupted into minor quarrels, other times into deeper, emotionally charged fights. Ethan, believing his ways were practical and future-oriented, felt frustrated by his inability to make his wives fully understand, while the wives struggled to keep up with Ethan's changes or misunderstood his intentions. The yurt, once filled with laughter, increasingly saw days of awkward silence or sharp arguments. Yet, what prevented them from turning their backs on each other completely was the fundamental trust and affection between them. And above all, the powerful connection of their children. Through repeated cycles of intense arguments followed by regret and reconciliation, They slowly learned to understand and accommodate each other. Ethan began to realize that his way wasn't the only way and made an effort to respect his wife's culture and methods. He tried to listen more to their opinions in business decisions and sought ways to harmonize with traditional values. Igel, too, gradually acknowledged Ethan's sincerity and his efforts for the family, slowly opening her heart. Gulnara, with her characteristically positive nature, often acted as a bridge between Ethan and her sisters, while Medina, with quiet wisdom, would thoughtfully consider both sides and help mediate. The greatest strength came from the children. Their innocent laughter and antics were a potent antidote to the cold tension between the adults. Caring for and worrying about the children together, they were reminded of how precious they were to one another. During this period, Gulnara and Medina became pregnant again and gave birth. And Igel also had a late child, making Ethan's family even larger and more boisterous. The increased number of children brought heavier responsibilities, but the warmth of their bustling, large family gave them the strength to overcome any difficulty. Through these cycles of conflict and reconciliation, they were becoming a true family, ever more deeply rooted in one another. Once the business was on a stable footing and the children had grown a bit, Ethan decided to act on a plan he had cherished for a long time, to take his entire family to his homeland, America. He wanted to show his wives and children where he was born and raised, a small town in Vermont. A world away from New York City, and perhaps fully reconcile with his own parents and siblings. When he told his wives about the plan to visit the US, their reactions were, as usual, varied. Gulnara was ecstatic. Really? We're going to fly across the ocean in a giant metal bird. I'm so curious to see your Vermont, Ethan, and maybe even the big city you left, she exclaimed, thrilled as a child. Medina smiled quietly, showing her anticipation, but couldn't hide a vague anxiety about such an unfamiliar world. Igel was the most cautious. Will it be okay to travel so far? I'm worried if our children will adapt. And, will your parents, your family, accept us like this? Her concerns were practical. Ethan, too, had his worries. He wasn't sure how his wives and children, who had never left the steppe, would cope with America, or how his own family would react to this highly unconventional family unit. But he believed the trip would be a precious experience and an opportunity for growth for everyone. After months of preparation, they finally embarked on their journey to America. Just getting from the All to Actau airport was a major undertaking. And boarding the transcontinental flight was a moment of mixed tension and excitement for everyone. As the heavy aircraft lifted into the sky, the wives and children watched the shrinking landscape of Mangistau out the window, their eyes filled with awe and a touch of fear of the unknown. The moment they landed at JFK in New York, they were thrown into an entirely different world. Endless streams of people, dazzling lights, the cacophony of English spoken at high speed, towering buildings, everything was overwhelming. After a few whirlwind days showing him the overwhelming scale of the city he'd fled, they took a smaller plane and then a rental car to his parents' home in Vermont. The lush green mountains and quaint towns were a stark contrast to both the steppe and NYC. Life in Vermont was a daily series of culture shocks, albeit different ones. Learning to navigate a large supermarket with its endless choices, understanding American social customs, the sheer amount of stuff people owned. Everything was new and fascinating. The children were thrilled with American toys and sugary cereals but also struggled with unfamiliar foods and the English language barrier. The wives were amazed by the material abundance and convenience but, on the other hand, found the individualistic nature of American society and the quiet, spread out rural life different from the communal all. Igel, especially, missed the constant presence of her extended family and the rhythms of the steppe. Gulnara, ever curious, tried to engage with everyone, charming Ethan's relatives. Medina quietly observed, helping with the children and trying her best to adapt. Ethan took his family to local fairs, showed him the fall foliage, if the timing was right, and they had a big family dinner that felt like Thanksgiving. They tried classic American food, hamburgers, pizza, apple pie. Some were hits, others less so. The most nerve-wracking moment was the extended family gathering. Ethan had cautiously informed his parents and siblings of his situation beforehand. As expected, the initial atmosphere was awkward and filled with unspoken questions. Ethan's parents were visibly trying to process the sight of their son with 3 Kazakh wives and a flock of grandchildren. However, as time passed, they began to warm up, touched by the children's innocent charm and the wives' sincere and respectful demeanor. Gulnara's bright and sociable nature and Medina's calm, capable manner made a particularly good impression. Igul, though quiet, conveyed her sincerity through her silent respect and efforts to help Ethan's mother in the kitchen. While perfect understanding would take much longer, it was a moment when tentative connections were made. Ethan felt a long-held tension in his chest ease slightly. The month-long trip to America was a short but intense experience. The family saw and felt countless new things, and in the process, they relied on each other more and grew stronger together. On the return flight, as they gazed at the clouds outside the window, their faces showed fatigue but also a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. This journey had opened their eyes to a new world, and at the same time, made them realize anew just how precious their home on the Mangistau steppe truly was. The all in Mangistau welcomed them back, unchanged. In contrast to the complex and sometimes overwhelming landscapes of America, the endless tranquility of the steppe and the myriad stars in the night sky brought them profound peace. The American experience brought small changes to their lives. Ethan, with renewed perspective, improved some of his business operation methods and became even more focused on the children's education. Now with a better understanding of bridging 2 worlds, the wives, too, talked about the conveniences or new ideas they had encountered in America and sometimes tried to incorporate small changes. But most importantly, they had reaffirmed and deepened their pride in and affection for their home and nomadic culture. Ethan's family business was now on a stable track and was having a positive impact on the local community. Their success showed new possibilities to other nomads in the area, and the all, once isolated and stagnant, was gradually regaining vitality. Ethan was no longer an outsider, he had become a trusted leader in the community. Respected for honoring his wives' wisdom and traditions while also guiding them toward new, sustainable changes. Years passed, and the children grew significantly. They played in the yurts and on the steppe, their playground, yet also learned about the world through a tablet PC Ethan had brought. Naturally speaking both English, taught by Ethan, and Kazakh, children truly bridging 2 worlds. The eldest son became quite adept at helping his father Ethan with the livestock. And the daughters learned traditional skills like felt making and cooking from their mothers while nurturing a curiosity about the wider world. In the meantime, Medina gave birth to another child, making Ethan's family even larger and more boisterous. Ethan was now a middle-aged man with flecks of grey in his hair. But his eyes still shone with the light of a young man of the steppe. Igul remained reserved, but her expression held a deep peace and satisfaction not seen before. Gulnara, ever cheerful, continued to bring laughter to the family, and Medina, with wisdom deepened by time, provided a steady center for the family. They were bound together by a love and trust that had deepened with the passing years. Respecting each other's differences, as the sun set, painting the steppe horizon in fiery reds, the whole family gathered in front of their yurt. Ethan, surrounded by his children, was telling them stories of American folk heroes, mixing them with Kazakh legends. And his wives watched, smiling, the distant sounds of returning sheep, the children's laughter, and Gulnara humming a traditional Kazakh folk song drifted softly on the evening steppe breeze. Ethan suddenly looked back on the path he had walked, on a journey begun to leave a life he found empty. He had, in a way he could never have imagined, found profound meaning and happiness. It wasn't about stock prices or promotions, but this very moment, feeling the steppe wind, living and breathing, surrounded by his beloved family, though their beginning might have been bizarre and precarious by any standard. The life they had woven together had become a beautiful, irreplaceable tapestry, beneath the starlight of Mangistau. The unique and beautiful story of Ethan, his 3 Kazakh wives, and their many children would continue, like an eternal song of the steppe. The story of Ethan Miller, his new Kazakh wives, and their children, written on the vast Mangostau steppe, transcends a mere tale of an American finding himself abroad. It offers profound reflections on fundamental life values and human relationships. His tumultuous journey and the extraordinary family that blossomed from it leave us with these valuable lessons. Initially, Ethan faces a cultural practice that is utterly incomprehensible by his American, Western ethical standards. This is a common experience. However, instead of just judging or walking away, Ethan strives to understand the desperate situation and historical context. Through shared extreme circumstances, he realizes their culture isn't merely bizarre but possesses its own rationality. Forged in a desperate struggle for survival, this highlights the importance of cultural relativism. Every culture has its own intrinsic value and context, requiring an open mind for understanding. Ethan initially rejects Beric's proposal based on his firm ethical beliefs. However, when an unforeseen crisis threatens the survival of the 3 women, his ethical priorities shift. The human instinct to save lives and protect the vulnerable outweighs abstract moral codes learned back home. This suggests that ethics are not immutable laws but can be flexibly applied depending on context, especially when survival is at stake. Ethan, who left a high-stakes career seeking freedom from its pressures, paradoxically finds true meaning in a different, profound kind of responsibility. Supporting a family and helping a community rebuild is arduous, but in it, he experiences a deep sense of connection, accomplishment, and happiness he never found in his old life. This shows that true fulfillment might not be liberation from all responsibility, but rather found in willingly accepting and shouldering meaningful ones. Ethan's union with his 3 wives is an extraordinary form of family, far removed from the typical American nuclear family model. Yet, the story movingly portrays how genuine love, trust, and happiness can flourish. The crucial message is that the form of a family matters less than how much its members care for, respect, and support each other. They form a deep bond that transcends conventional norms. This story is an epic of human adaptability. Ethan carves out a new life, adapting to an unfamiliar nomadic culture. The wives, too, persevere through immense changes. They rely on each other in crises, overcome difficulties together, and emerge stronger. This demonstrates the importance of a flexible attitude and the power of hope. Ethan cast off a life many would envy and plunged into an uncertain future. Though not his initial intention, life in Mangostau brought him a depth of satisfaction and meaning he could never have imagined. This suggests that sometimes, life's greater meaning can be found in unexpected encounters. What matters is embracing new possibilities with an open mind. Ethan's life tells us that true happiness is not some distant ideal but something created right here, right now. In conclusion, the story of Ethan and his Kazakh family offers more than just intriguing entertainment. It provides an opportunity for deep resonance and reflection. Understanding that transcends cultural prejudice, human struggle and responsibility, love that redefines family, resilient spirit, and the value of life found in unexpected places. All these elements create gentle yet profound ripples in our hearts. Ultimately, this story asks us, what values will you hold on to? And what kind of story will your life be filled with? The answer lies within each of our hearts and on the life journeys yet to be walked.